Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Better Rivals podcast, episode 90. I am your host, Avery Roush, along with co-host Gitano Gallo. And we have lots to talk about today. We're getting closer to playoff time. Things are getting intense for the Leafs. Montreal had a fun game to talk about last night. Gitano, we'll speak on that later. Harvey-Pinard with a quick Hattie, Rafaël Harvey-Pinard to you.
There you go.
Auston Matthews has 2 goals in back-to-back games. He seems to be back, which I think is exactly what the Leafs needed going into April. It's March 26th today, so I'm feeling better than I did last week. I think about where the Leafs are at. We also have some news from around the league to get into. Some more players protesting Pride Night. So we'll talk about that a little bit to finish off. But as always, we'll start off with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Last night, they played the Carolina Hurricanes, lost 5-3. Another, I'm not even going to talk about it at length, but another insanely, terribly officiated hockey game.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into it again and blow my top again, but
what I will say, I think the refs are in playoff mode right now already.
Yeah, they're in peak playoff form, for sure. It's an embarrassment to the league, but again, we don't have to get into it because we've gotten into it time and time again.
And I'm going to be doing it a little later too anyways, so.
The Leafs were heavily outplayed in the first period, mainly due to a 5-on-3 that was pretty ticky-tacky to start the game. I believe it was 3 minutes in, they were already down 2 guys. Shots at that time were 10 or 11 to 1 at the end of that. It was 2-0 by the 5-minute mark of the first period. They did kind of battle back in that first period, though, ended up tying up the shots and then had one of the best second periods the Leafs have played all year. Scored a couple goals. Calle Yarncroke looks to be fitting in just fine on that top line with Mitch Marner and Auston Matthews. And Auston Matthews seems to love the guy. He has nothing but glowing reviews. When Auston Matthews is complimenting your release, you know you're doing something right. Because I think Auston Matthews probably has the best release in the game.
One of them for sure, yeah.
With a wrist shot. Maybe that clap bomb from Ovi, yes, but we're talking about toe drag release. I think Auston Matthews is the best in the world at that when he's healthy. He was battling wrist injury all year, so we didn't get to see it. We've seen it 4 times in 2 games now. So I think he's...
You said you're feeling better about the Leafs now than you were last week. Is that simply because Matthews is back and scoring?
Yes, that's exactly why. I didn't like the line juggling that Keefe was doing. I think it was really, really messing up some chemistry that the team was building. I think that he's got to stick with what he's got right now, and that's that top line of Yarncroke, Matthews, and Marner. I think Nylander and Tavares have started to look a little better. They went on a cold streak, man. They looked pretty bad for, what Keefe always says is Willie plays his best when his feet are moving, and Willie's feet were just not moving. And John, he seems to create so many high-danger chances right around the net, and he wasn't able to do that for a good 2-week period, but he seems to be back doing that. And last night, Carolina, Kochetkov, Coochie there, he played a hell of a hockey game, man. I think he's got an 860 or 870 save percentage on the year, but he played unbelievable last night. He made some saves that you need your goalie to make if you're going to make a playoff run, and for Carolina, they're going to need that. They haven't been getting good goaltending this year, but it hasn't mattered because of how good defensively they are. Last night, the Leafs totally broke them down defensively, but their goalie stood on his head. Yeah, they got bailed out, and that's not often that happens to the Carolina Hurricanes. Honestly, they're a really good defensive team. Moving on to some more games that happened in Leafland this week. They did beat the Panthers 6-2. That was a big game. The Panthers played horrible, and that was one of the Leafs' best 60-minute performances. Maybe not. Like I said, last night they had that second period was the best period I've seen them play all year. But the full 60 performance against Ottawa was exceptional. They really locked it down. Matty Tkachuk had a goal, but other than that, they locked it down hard. And again, Matthews scores a couple goals. Fantastic stuff to see. There was, I mentioned off the top of the show, there was something else that happened in that game, but we'll talk about that a little bit afterwards. It happened before that game, I should say.
Yeah.
moving on to the Tuesday night game that the Leafs played. They played the Islanders, and that was one of the worst. Like the Panthers game was one of the best. That was one of the worst 60-minute performances the Leafs have put up all year. They looked slow. They looked like they weren't interested. I don't know why, but they were awful. And you can't allow the New York Islanders to score 7 goals on you. Like, that's just not feasible.
No.
They're a terrible offensive team. They're a very good defensive team, but they're not. They don't even have Matt Barzal right now. And they torched us. Like, I think I forget, Cal Clutterbuck had 2 goals in the game. That was 33% of his goals on the season.
I was about to say that's probably his only 2 of the year.
He's got 6.
Good for him.
Cal Clutterbuck has 6. Anders Lee had a goal. It was a very, very bad performance. You could tell, too, in that game that Samsonov was not fully invested, and I can understand that. He had a kid the following day.
You think it was just like a one-off, just they had a bad game, or?
I think it was just nobody showed up, including the goaltender, and when your goaltender doesn't show up, it's hard to really, when everything's going in, it's hard to play. You know that.
Yeah.
You've seen that
after the Habs last week. I know.
It's just, against that game against Florida, exactly. It's kind of that. Like, when everything's going in, what are you going to do, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like, why even try? Because whatever you do, you're just going to have to battle harder, you know?
Yeah.
So, that was basically the week in Toronto. So, a bad game, followed by an extremely good game, followed by a pretty good game that they got beaten anyway because a goalie stood on his head, and the refereeing was, again, pitiful.
Yeah.
Let's move into Montreal, though, because there's a few things I want to talk about in Montreal this week, actually.
Yeah, so the Habs actually had a decent week. All 3 performances, so Tuesday, Thursday, and last night, were actually like really, really solid 60-minute team efforts. You're starting to see the foundation of what Marty St. Louis wants from this team, and you're seeing like the results coming from it. Because at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, you kind of seen the ideas, but it just they weren't quite there. Beating Tampa 3-2 in Montreal, a 4-2 loss to the Bruins in Boston. Again, a great game. They took an empty netter to make it 4-2. So, pushed one of the best teams, the best team in the league for 60 minutes. And then last night, absolutely clapping the Columbus Blue Jackets 8-2. It wasn't just that Columbus is dog shit, because they are. I didn't realize how bad they are because we don't see them play as often. They're horrific.
Yeah.
They are bad. And the Canadians played so well. Rafaël Harvey-Pinard with his first career hat trick. He's now 9th in rookie goal scoring and has 17 points in his 29 games this season. It was great for him. And like I said, it was actually a pretty decent week for the Habs.
Yeah, seems like it. There was something else that happened in Montreal. I was just thinking of it, and it's completely escaped my mind. Oh, yes. Mike Hoffman getting cross-checked at the mouth.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
So, let me start this off by saying I've not been a fan of Mike Hoffman as a Hab. Like, he's just been entirely fine, I guess.
Forgettable.
Like, no standout moments, no reason to really love him or hate him. He's just kind of there doing his thing. Eats a cross-check in the mouth in the Bruins game. Gets AJ Greer tossed. We get the 5-minute power play from him. It was all right. So AJ Greer gets a 1-game suspension for a cross-check. It busted his whole lower lip. I think he said it was about 25 stitches total inside and outside his mouth. AJ Greer gets a 1-game suspension for it. Mike Hoffman takes Instagram video of his face all fucking busted up. I'll probably edit it in here somewhere. And he's like, so I got a 2-game suspension for cross-checking a guy in the back of the head. But this is just a 1-game suspension?
What am I doing here, Gitano?
Spin the wheel and throw a dart. And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. I don't know
the one thing
else
I thought about and want to bring up is Auston Matthews on Darlene that got him 2 games.
Don't even I missed that game. That was the game.
I know. And I look at that and I'm like Darlene wasn't hurt from that. It was go, fucking check your helmet, make sure your helmet's fucking fine, play the next shift. Matthews got 2 games for that. AJ Greer straight up cross-checking Mike Hoffman in the mouth, busting his face open, 25 stitches, 1 game.
Yep. Yeah, that's
like, I don't get it. I don't.
Safety. That is the Department of Player Safety. And they say that they're like, going back to the argument that we had, well, not argument, the discussion that we had last week, and that was fighting in the NHL, does it belong? When you have that shit happening, when that guy gets a 1-game sus for like intentionally busting a guy's face open, you need fighting in the game, because if not, then that's just going to happen every game. Somebody's going to take a liberty like that because they're just going to get a 1-game sussy. Who cares? 1 game and move on, right? That's
because if you're a 4th line piece of shit, yeah, absolutely cross-check Auston Matthews in the head, take a 1 game, whatever. Like,
exactly.
What's it to you?
I just take fighting out of the game, then guys are going to take liberties like that all of the time.
And like I said, you can take fighting out, but you have to reform reffing and supplementary discipline. And if you're not going to do that, then you're just going to end up with a fucking disaster.
It's going to be more dangerous than it is with fighting in the game.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think we both agree on that. So yeah, that's what I wanted to touch on for Montreal, because that was crazy, and it's nice to see Mike Hoffman step up and say something about the fact that that was insane, and he's got to say something. He got that could have done a lot more damage than it did.
Yeah, that could have easily turned into a broken jaw, fucking
exactly, easily. And then he's done for how long, right? And he's eating through a straw,
and not that Mike Hoffman's like a superstar in the league, but he's like an established veteran,
yes,
middle to top end ish, before you get to the superstars. That's kind of where he's at.
Absolutely.
And so I know it's tougher for the superstars to kind of speak out, but it is nice to see someone who's, been around for a while and established in the league speaking out about it.
Yeah, and also I wanted to talk about superstars speaking out about stuff. How about Connor McDavid calling for a best-on-best international hockey tournament? That was nice to see, because he doesn't talk much. We know that,
man,
right?
Well, first of all, yeah, it was great to hear him talk, him specifically talking about it.
Yes,
but we haven't seen Connor McDavid represent Canada since he played in the World Juniors.
Yeah, that's insane. We haven't seen Nate McKinnon play together. We haven't seen him and Sidney Crosby play together.
Yeah, and I genuinely think we have maybe 2 years left of that, for a possibility, maybe.
The way Sid's playing this year, I think we might have longer than that. But yeah, I hear where you're coming from.
And that's it. I think if Gary Bettman blows this, if Gary Bettman does not get some sort of best-on-best tournament going, whether it's Olympics or something, to see Crosby and McDavid play together, they have to. Can you imagine? Just a
World Cup of hockey. That's all we want. Just a World Cup of hockey.
Can you imagine not having seen Gretzky and Lemieux play together?
I know.
That was one of the greatest combinations in the history of all of sports.
Yes.
When they played together for Canada. So you're robbing us, the fans, of as a nation, you're robbing us of the fucking opportunity to see probably 2 of the best players of all time.
I want to see McDavid and Matthews go up against each other too. I want to see Elias Pettersson play for Team Sweden, William Nylander play for Team Sweden. I want to see Mitch Marner on Team Canada. These are things that we as hockey fans crave. Let me ask you this. What are your thoughts? Because I've seen some debate that this tournament couldn't realistically be held without the Russians.
I have no problem leaving them out due to the current political climate, but if we're just strictly speaking hockey, shut the curtains, we're just talking hockey, absolutely you want the Russians there.
Absolutely, you want the Russians there, but the IIHF has made a ruling that they're not going to compete in anything for the next this year.
I'm not gonna.
No,
considering what's going on, I'm not going to argue with the IIHF.
No, that is. I think I am okay, especially in the name of, like you said, getting to see Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon and Mitch Marner and all of these fantastic hockey players, Alex Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore,
Cale Makar.
You hear what I'm saying?
Other than goalies, Canada's fucking stacked.
Yes, unbelievably good. But just in the name of that, Sorry, Russia, man. Putin shouldn't have gone to war. If you didn't do that, then you could play in the tournament, but you can't play in the
Yeah, no,
tournament.
like
This
100%.
president's an idiot, so
Yeah, like the fact that Russia would not be there is not hamper my want for that tournament.
no, not at all. And I've seen some talk of that you could. It's not a real best on best tournament without the Russians, but the current political climate doesn't allow. Excuse me, for that to take place, and that's just that. It sucks because you're telling me I would love to see Igor Shesterkin in net with Alex Ovechkin, Artemi Panarin.
Is Shesterkin even be the starter over Vasilevsky?
Oh my god, I completely forgot that Andrei Vasilevsky exists.
Yeah. No, and that's what I mean. Like I said, if you're just going to shut the curtains and just strictly speak hockey, absolutely you want the Russians there.
Yeah, but Panarin. Come on, man. Like Kuznetsov playing with Tarasenko. Like how great.
Yeah, all of them.
Just unbelievable. That would be fantastic to see. And it sucks that the climate won't allow for it, but the climate won't allow for it. So it's just
I'm not.
We got to move forward here. We got to play it best on best. It has to happen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I want to see Auston Matthews and Patrick Kane. There's another one, right?
Yo, get a healthy Cole Caulfield in there, please, and thank you.
Anyway. We don't have to keep rhyming off matchups, and duos. But man, let me tell you.
Yeah, there needs to be best on best sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to a little bit more serious of a topic here. Not that wasn't serious, but before the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Florida Panthers held a Pride Night, and following suit of James Reimer, the Stahl brothers, Eric and Mark, refused to participate in the pregame warm-up wearing their Pride jerseys, citing their belief system as the reason for not participating. I'll just be straight up. That's absolute fucking garbage. I've said it on this very show before. I don't have a problem with you being a religious person. I'm not a religious person. I know Gitano's not a religious person. But I have no issue with you being religious. But when you start to use it as a reason to be hateful and to show people that they're not welcome, now I have a problem. Now that's where the issues come up. Now here is, I think, an argument that is, I've seen less, but I really resonates with me personally because I grew up in a religious family. My girlfriend's family is religious. There have been a lot of instances where I have sat down, held hands with people, bowed my head before I eat dinner, and said grace, even though I don't believe that God exists. There have been numerous occasions that I have walked into a church and I had sat there and I did the whole thing, thinking my whole time in the head, I feel like I'm in a cult right now. That's what I think the whole time when I'm in a church. I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but that's just how I feel. The amount of times that I've done that out of respect for the people that wanted me to do that, it's countless the amount of times I've done that. So all that I'm asking of these NHL players, shut the fuck up, put the jersey on for 20 minutes, skate around, play the game, and move on. That's all. That's all we're asking of you. We're not asking you to join a club. We're not asking you to enlist in a mission. We're not asking you to do anything other than tell people from the LGBTQ plus community that they are welcome in your building. That is it. We are not asking you to be a part of that community. Just tell them that they are welcome.
And if you want to get real about it, Ave, it's basically asking these players to do the bare fucking minimum.
Bare minimum.
Literally, the difference in their day is that instead of putting on a normal jersey for their warm-up, they put on one with a slightly different color pattern, and it might have patches on the shoulder. And you go skate around for 20 minutes, do your warm-up like you normally would, and then you take it off, it gets washed. Probably the next couple days you have to sign it for the auction, and that's it. That's the effort we're asking you to put in. Mm-hmm. Is put on a slightly different jersey and sign it a couple days later. That's it.
Well, and like I've said again, I hate to sound like a broken record here, but these aren't you do it for military appreciation night. We're not telling you that you have to be a military member to do that. Like, we're not asking you to join the military. You do it for Hockey Fights Cancer. We're not telling you that you've got cancer. You do it for Indigenous Heritage Night. We're not telling you.
I would say
that
the Habs
Indigenous.
literally last night celebrated their had Indigenous celebration night. And could you imagine the shitstorm if a player had been like, "No, I'm not going to wear the warm-up jersey because I'm not native."
I don't.
You can't do that. Like, that's just.
And the other thing that I have to say is you don't get to pick and choose which beliefs. Like, when you're religious, like, either you're religious or you're not. You don't get to pick and choose what beliefs that you're going to carry out, right? Like, I hope that both the Stalls, again, I sound like a broken record, but I hope both the Stalls were virgins until they got married. Because if not, then, man, Jesus got a problem there.
And it's wild that so two of them opted out, but Jordan plays in Carolina and he did not opt out when Carolina did theirs a few weeks back.
Well, see, the thing about the Stalls, right, is they're a real coward's coward. They waited until James Reimer did it. Didn't get really much blowback. He got some blowback publicly, but not from the team or the league. Nobody did anything. So they said, "Oh, look, he did it. He didn't get in trouble. So I'm going to do it too." When did Carolina have their Pride Night?
It would have been a couple weeks ago. But even then,
So
definitely pre-Reimer, but after Provorov.
Provorov, though, I think that's a little different because of the Russian element. To me, it's different. We're talking about white males from North America citing their Catholic belief system. I think is the difference there for me. Okay. Especially considering that...
I see where you're coming from.
Especially considering the new Russian legislation that I wasn't aware of. I actually heard Brian Burke talk about it last night on Sportsnet. There was fears, and this is why Chicago canceled Pride Night, because they have some Russian players that had fears that their family would be persecuted back in Russia due to a new anti-LGBTQ plus legislation that was put in place in Russia. Propaganda related to promoting of alternative lifestyles is the wording that Burke used.
But again, like Bobrovsky was happily wearing his Pride jersey.
Again, credit where credit is due, right? You got to give credit where credit is due. So I give credit to one, the Florida Panthers organization for still having Pride Night, even though they knew those two fucking idiots were going to sit out. And number two, you got to give it to Sergei Bobrovsky, because we know that he is very Russian. And you know what? He didn't care. He wore the jersey. Just like I said, he shut up, put the jersey on, skated around for 20 minutes, and guess what? Nobody hates him today.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And also, I guess I got a special shout out to Eric Stahl for being an even bigger piece of shit and lying and saying that he's never worn a Pride jersey before, when there is physical evidence, pictures and videos, and someone owns the Pride jersey that he wore in Montreal in 2021, less than 2 years ago.
That's what I mean. He's a coward's coward. He's a coward's coward. And you know what? I used to have a lot of respect for Eric Stahl. And you know what? All of the Stahl brothers. I don't know what was in the water in Thunder Bay. How are they producing all these great hockey players? But you know what? I have no use for them now. And I'll leave Jordan out of it because, like you said, he did participate, and we don't know if he's a coward's coward too and wouldn't have participated had it been after the James Reimer thing. But at this point, I have absolutely no use for Eric and Mark Stahl. None. They should not be in the league anymore. To be honest with you, they're not good enough to be in the league anymore.
Yeah, that's not even like a political statement. They shouldn't be in the league. It's like a hockey statement. They probably shouldn't be in the league.
That was a hockey statement. I'm not saying kick them out of the league for their beliefs. I'm saying kick them out of the league.
Exactly.
They're not good anymore. Yeah, no. And like you said, man, the denying it too, like right to the reporters' faces, like when they're sitting there looking at their phone with a picture of him in a Pride jersey on it. Like it's incredibly. I don't even know what to say.
At this point, honestly, Ave, and now I'm saying this as a straight white guy, so like take my thing with a grain of salt here, but like I would honestly just prefer if the players just came out and said, instead of being like, oh, it's a religious thing, it's a lifestyle thing, like he's like, no, I don't like gay people. Like at least I'd be like, okay, at least you're being upfront with us. Yeah. Like you're not putting on a show and like just fucking say it. Just fucking be a dickhead, admit to being a dickhead, and then we could fucking go from there.
We can move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hate that we have to keep talking about this. I really do. But if we do have any members of the LGBTQ plus community listening to this, you are welcome in this sport. I personally, Gitano, I'm speaking for him as well. We want nothing more than for you to be a part of this sport. And that is the only reason that we keep talking about and defending this, is because that needs to be said. And not enough people are saying it. And it's a few idiots like the Stahl brothers, like James Reimer, and the various other players that have taken whatever stance they want to take. It's very few players, and don't let it discourage you. Seriously. You're welcome. You have been, maybe it hasn't felt like it, but you've been welcome in my eyes for a long time, and you will continue to be welcome in this sport. So that is all I have to say about that.
That was really nicely put, Avery.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyway, back to hockey for a few minutes here. We'll get to what's going to happen this week in both Leafland and in Habland. So, starting tonight, the Leafs play the Predators at 6 p.m. I thought it was the Florida Panthers. I don't know why. We play them on Wednesday. That's why, the next game. Yeah, I told my father-in-law we played the Panthers. He's going to think I'm stupid, but it's fine.
He doesn't. He already thinks that. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know he does. Anyway. Panthers are, oh my God, Predators tonight, Panthers Wednesday, in Ottawa again on Saturday, and then another back-to-back. We play the Wings in Toronto the following Sunday, but we'll have an episode out at the same time as that game. So
the Habs are going a little bit of a road trip, doing Buffalo and Philadelphia tomorrow and Tuesday, so back-to-back there. And then we're at home to the Panthers on Thursday and the Hurricanes on Saturday. I think just a quick note before we go. Just this morning, the Habs signed Sean Farrell to an ELC from Harvard. He was fucking ripping it up there. And earlier in the week, signed Jaden Struble. So he is in Laval for the rest of this season. His ELC will kick in next year. Farrell is making this road trip, though, with the Habs.
Awesome. Good stuff. Well, that, I think, does it for today's episode of the Bitter Rivals podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to the Game Entertainment and Media for hosting us on all of their platforms. Check us out on all of our social medias, Instagram, Twitter, 2 Twitter accounts, like I mentioned before.
In the description.
All down here. Thank you again very much for listening, and we will catch you next week for episode 91.